So for the last part of notes today, I'm going to show you how we can use desmos to help us find graphs and their domain and their range. So in your notes from where I just stopped in the last video, you'll see different graphs, different functions. Okay, and if we go to desmos.com, which is where I'm at right now, okay, if you just straightforward go to Desmos, if you've never used this before, this is what will come up. You'll click on Graphing Calculator here. And then over here on this side, you'll be able to enter that function rule. So that number one says y equals, and then we just have x minus 5. And then over here, it will graph it for you, and you'll also be able to scroll around. So you can drag, you can sort of look and see what's happening. So we looked at those four graphs at sort of a very basic situation. So you sort of got the concept. You're now going to have to look at these and figure out what the domain and range is. And these are a little bit more unique. So at least on number one, right, we notice no matter how far we drag to the right, that graph keeps going up. Same thing when we drag to the left, the graph keeps going down. So our domain on this is all real numbers. Okay, if we want to zoom out, you'll also notice if I just sort of I can just keep zooming, right? Nothing is changing about this. This is going on for forever that way as well, up and down, right and left. So our range on this one is also all real numbers. Okay, and as we start to look at some of these different graphs, we'll notice different situations. So if you're unsure of how to type something in, I'm going to drag this bar down here, which is part of how I'm taking the video over here. You'll also notice there's a keyboard down here. Okay, so let's say, okay, I don't want to do that graph anymore, and I'm going to skip to number 3 because I'm not going to do number 2 for you. That's an in-class activity. So we could say y equals, and then we'll do 5 divided by, oops. Okay, and when I do divided by, it automatically puts in that fraction bar, and I'm going to put x minus 5 on the bottom. But if I needed any of those extra keys, like x squared, square root, right, this is giving me all those other functions. So I'm going to put in x minus 5 here. And I'm going to look at this graph, and this graph definitely looks different than what we've seen before. Okay, and for the most part, right, it looks like this graph, right and left, is going as far right and left as we can see, which it's doing, right? The more I zoom out, or the more I zoom in or out, right, I keep seeing it in all directions. Okay, so for the most part, our domain is all real numbers, and our range is also all real numbers. But we will notice right here, you don't have to type this in, I'm just going to type it in so you can see it. Right here, where this green line just popped up, right, we'll notice that the graph just keeps getting closer and closer to it, but it does that weird split there. That's because this graph can't actually be at 5. And if we think about this, if we were to type 5 in here, 5 minus 5 is 0. And we cannot divide by 0. Okay, that's not allowed in math. A fraction is any value a over b, where b is not equal to 0. So our domain is actually all real numbers, but it excludes 0. So what we write down is that x cannot equal, so an equal sign with a cross through it, cannot equal 0. So we have that same idea happening for our y value, right? Up and down, it's going up, 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 down, down, down. Okay, but we have this weird thing happening right here at 0, where it does the same thing. So our range here is all real numbers. Okay, but y cannot equal 0. I think I might have said 0 on the last one. It was 5, right? We had it at 5. So it's all real numbers where x cannot equal 5 for our domain, and all real numbers where y cannot equal 0 for our range. So you go through and use this program and try and figure out the domain and range for the rest of these.